First one is Reframe the Experience, and I really want you to expand on that. What are your thoughts when you think about reframing the experience? Because someone that goes through layoff, it's not a good experience. How do you shift? Because when you have that information and you have the agreement, I think what comes to your mind, if you have family, if you have kids, if you have bills to pay, what you really think about is, how am I going to live? And how can you shift from that perspective? Well, I lost my paycheck to God is my provider. What I see is, especially Christians, they live based on a passive faith. What I mean by passive faith is a faith that really expects everything from God. And so people expect miracles from God, expect luck from God, when He already gave us everything. We already have the toolbox. So we just need to take action. We just need to be creators of our own destiny, our future. And sometimes laid off is the opportunity we have to do different, to do better, to discover our brand soul essence, to do what God called us to do or be.
Hi, welcome to the Mastermind Institute podcast, where we believe if you master your mind, you're going to master your life. We really enjoy celebrating the concept of mastery. So, joining me is my colleague Sandra Andrade, and we are going to talk to you about mastering layoff. Welcome, Sandra. How you doing?
I'm perfect. Thank you for asking.
Well, Sandra, so we're going to talk about 7 tips about how to master layoffs. What's the first category that we're going to discuss?
The first one is Reframe the Experience, and I really want you to expand on that. What are your thoughts when you think about reframing the experience? Because someone that goes through layoff, it's not a good experience.
It's a horrible experience. Um, so there are a number of things that you can feel, but one of them is it can hit you in such a way where it shatters your self-confidence. Um, you probably know that our identity is wound up in our job. You can see my t-shirt. You may be able to see my t-shirt. It's blocked here. Made in his image, made in his image. And my belief is God has made us in his image. And one of God's greatest qualities is God is a creator. So you're going to find when we are creating, especially creating at the best level possible, we have a sense of feeling alive. We have a sense of feeling fulfilled. And go figure, our identity is going to be wrapped up in that. So when you get laid off, you can imagine how much that reinforces those thoughts about, hey, I wonder if I'm an imposter. I wonder if I'm not good enough. I wonder if they were right. These are all some thoughts that can absolutely have us stuck. I'm not going to necessarily say you need to run away from that immediately, because sometimes it can be helpful to just let it sit, let it simmer. But this reframing means you shift from that perspective. After you've given it the allotted time, you shift from that perspective, because if you stay in that perspective, it's very de-empowering. Now, what are your thoughts about that, Sandra?
How do you shift? Because when you have that information and you have the agreement, I think what comes to your mind, if you have family, if you have kids, if you have bills to pay, what you really think about is, how am I going to live? And how can you shift from that perspective? Well, I lost my paycheck to God is my provider.
Ooh. Beautiful. Beautiful question. I know that question is on the mind of a lot of our listeners. So you've got this emotional stuff that I'm talking about, but then you have the practical everyday. Do you have the rent this month? Your kid's coming to you, and hey, mom, you know the trip that I have to go to, or dad, am I going to be able to finish school? Okay, so incredibly real, all incredibly real. And it almost magnifies how important it is then to make that shift. Because I tell you, you will not be able to deal with those realities and have not addressed that shift that you need to make. So first we highlight what you need to do, and then next we can then discuss how you need to do it. So step one is the self-talk is the self-talk, like literally before you believe it. I am enough. I am going to rise again. There's this myth that sometimes we operate thinking that people, everything they did, they just succeeded. They succeeded and then they tried something else and they succeeded again and they tried something else and they succeeded again. And to the real pioneers and titans in this world, they would laugh if you said it was just rosy, wasn't it? Name any one of them. All of them, every single one of them was brought to the brink, and some of them were pushed over the brink and came back from that. So it's a myth that setbacks aren't going to occur, or that setbacks are a sign that you're less than. Actually, it might be a sign you are actually pushing things to the limit, and that what you're creating has value. Well, of course, then it's going to be challenged. So we're talking now about the how. How do you do it? So, number one, I mentioned self talk, but then number two, sometimes you can't do it by yourself. So sometimes now you need some support. It might be a friend or a family member, rarely, because people are not just born great counselors. And a great counselor is a perfect balance of listening to you and making sure they're understanding it, and then also having the wisdom to tell you what that right thing is or helping you discover it yourself. We don't always have that in our friend or family network. In fact, rarely do we. But once in a while, if you do, you can take advantage of that. So now you might have to then get maybe a coach, or a counselor or a therapist, or whatever is necessary so that they can provide you support in doing that very important work of shifting, of reframing. Reframing is telling the story in a different perspective, telling a different story, not from the perspective that validates your inadequacies, but one that understands that you have amazing abilities, and this may not be a confirmation of your imposter syndrome, but it might actually be a stepping stone to some of the greatest success you're ever going to experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it's good to hear you talk about God in such a difficult phase of life, because sometimes what I see is, especially Christians, they live based on a passive faith. What I
Hmm.
mean by passive faith is a faith that really expects everything from God. And so people expect miracles from God, expect um, luck from God, when He already gave us everything. We
Wow.
already have the toolbox. So we just need to take action. We just need to be creators of our own destiny, our future. And sometimes laid off is the opportunity we have to do different, to do better, to discover our brand soul essence, to do what God called us to do or be. So, I would love to hear from you. Second tip you have for today is activate your power network.
What did you mean by brand soul essence? Because I have no idea what that means.
Brand soul essence is what your soul came here to do, what you want to be known by, what is the imprint you want to live, what is your legacy, your brand soul essence. Everyone, and remember the parable of talents, remember?
Yeah. Uh,
We are called to do the best we can with what we have. And sometimes what people see is the environment, what other people are doing. No, no, no. You are called to redesign a new life, a new future. So be the creator. God made you at his image, right? So you have the power to create the future you want. So live a life of attitude and gratitude.
well, and pertinent to this discussion is you have the power to create the solution. Like, how amazing is that? To crystallize a problem, and then you are actually endowed with the power to create the solution. So some people, they're looking for a job when in fact this is an opportunity to create their job. And well, what kind of job are you looking for? And they say, I want to do anything. And the problem with that is, where do I even begin to help you if it's anything? It's just not how the brain works. Rather than having 100 opportunities, it's like I kind of want to hear one, like, hey, I live to do X. As soon as you say that, now I start thinking, who do I know that's also passionate about that? And immediately I can link you with that person. And here's the issue: it's hard to connect the person to another person, and that person is not really sincerely passionate about that thing, because it's discerned immediately. If you're not really passionate about it, it's discerned immediately, and people are like, I need to get out of the presence of this person because you're not really that passionate about it. But if you're passionate about it, it's discernible immediately. Like, no, you really are passionate about it. You read about it in your spare time. You're doing this, you're doing that, and it's a natural fit. But when if I make a bad connection, then my connection is going to come back to me like, hey, why'd you link me with that person? It was a waste of time, and that's not good. So the idea just being, I know you want to say you can do anything, but if you can be honest about your passion, it makes it easier for people to help you.
Our second topic of today is activate your power network. So, how important is to reach out to people that can help us to achieve faster, to attain the results that we want, and not allow us to stay in our comfort zones.
So that beautifully dovetails what we were talking about in terms of connecting with people. But when you experience the layoff, sometimes you don't feel like doing that. And this is one of those things that you have to do despite that. From a neurobiological standpoint, it takes a lot of energy to be around people. There's a reason we're intimidated to walk into a crowded room, especially where we are actually going to be noticed by that crowd, because we understand that the scrutiny is really kind of off the chain. And there's so many people scrutinizing you, and the more eyes on you, the more likely they are to detect the flaws. And at least this is how you might view it. And it takes a tremendous amount of energy. This is why when you get down, when you're not in the mood, so to speak, you don't want to go. And you certainly don't want to go to events where you're going to be noticed. If you're not going to be noticed, then it's actually a little easier to go. But if you feel like you're going to be noticed, you kind of don't want to go. And this is exactly what you need to do to activate your network so that you can find the next opportunity. Your opportunities, the funding you need, the finances that you need, are in the possession of people, the very people you're afraid to talk to. And that's why activating that network, mentors, allies, high level peers, having that conversation, what might be even private networks, going to organizations, linking up with people who are like you, and as you're organizing various networks. These are some of the things that you can do in order to get set up for that next opportunity. That's critical.
One of the things that I see is that we live in a world that glorifies youth, right? So if you are 40 years old, 50 years old, you may think that, what am I going to do with this age? Who is going to help me? Who is going to hand me a hand? Who is going to help me to chain different? And so many people wonder, who's going to hire me, right? So what should be the thought?
So, look, I don't know if this is true or not. Let me be perfectly honest, but I heard that there was this named Bismarck, right? And he was looking for a strategy to get rid of his adversaries. And so he was just thinking and thinking and thinking. And then he noticed that they had a common age. I don't know, they were around the age of 55 or 60. And so what he said was that age was the retirement age. So it was purely a tactic to get rid of his enemies. Because the reality is, actually, when you're in your 50s and your 60s, you're often in your professional prime. You're in a groove. You understand how to do things the best. You've kind of set up life to perform at your best. You have social networks. You have some respect in the field. You have some insights that can be incredibly awesome, provided your mindset is fit to recognize that, provided your mindset is such that you actually recognize that rather than looking at your age as some kind of deficit. It's actually an asset, provided you have the right mindset. So I would say, if anything, your age very likely might be your asset. A lot of the pioneers, a lot of the titans, they really had their major achievements in their 50s and their 60s.
Absolutely. And if we are willing to grow, we can always find a different route and something that we are passionate about. Amazing. The third point that we're going to talk about today is turn your expertise into consulting or coaching. What are your thoughts on that? Please tell us more about that. Can everyone turn into a coach?
In a sense, yes. But I think what this is really saying is, again, it's really kind of going back to shifting. Like, when we don't do an inventory, and this is why inventory is so important. If you don't do an inventory, then you don't see what you may have that might actually be an asset. And when you commit yourself to delivering value, you can be so incredibly helpful. What you would take as just, you didn't know that, that could be a game changer to another person. So, as I've joked to you several times, Sandra, like, if I hear one more person say monetize your content, right? Okay, that is not the easy task that we make it out to be. So let's just own that. And it's getting harder and harder with the evolution of AI and the ability for people to just ask a question and get an answer. Okay, that's getting harder and harder. However, the reality is that if you take an inventory of your knowledge and your experience and the problems you're comfortable solving, there's somebody out there that would love to have you solve that problem for them and will pay you to solve that problem for them. And so, of course, the trick then is making sure you're sharp in solving that problem as quickly and as efficiently as possible, appropriately charging for it, and being linked to those people who need that issue. So we're not here to make it sound like it's just so super easy, but that is available to just about anyone that has been consistently solving an issue for any length of time. And for many of us, if you, by the time you're getting laid off, a lot of times you've got some years of experience doing that thing. So you have some value. Well, the goal is to rethink how you might market that value so that it can generate some very needed funds for you.
Amazing. So there are some people that when they face this new reality, they close themselves, they go into isolation, and sometimes they start going into depression. So, what would you say would be the first signs of depression after layoff?
So the first thing that we notice with depression, the first thing that can often alert us is a change in the pattern, a change in what you would normally do. So you might notice profound reduction in energy. So an energy and a motivation to do things that you normally would enjoy. So you're not motivated to go out and hang out with people. You're not motivated to go out and do those activities that you think are fun, your hobbies. You might not be motivated to get out of bed, for example. The key thing though is it's a shift. As you look at your typical activities of daily living, you start noticing that it's more difficult to engage in those activities. Now, obviously, the worst case scenario is where a person feels both desperate and hopeless. When you get those two things, you really should get yourself into the care of professional people, because that's when desperation and hopelessness match up. Now people can be at serious risk for self-harm. And so if you know that you have a person like that, or maybe a subordinate, or if you yourself are feeling like that, get yourself into the care of professional people. So whether you need to um, access emergency resources, or your local county resources, or getting a visit professional mental health practitioner, these can be some very, very wise things to do. But I would say my answer to that question would be change, a drop in energy, feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, and increased thoughts of death and dying. These are the things I'd be worried about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, and another thing that you identified is the importance of investing in your next level skills. So, if someone would love to learn Portuguese, it's never too late, right?
In fact, learning new skills is one of the important tools for keeping your brain fresh, and in some ways avoiding things like dementia. So skill acquisition should be something that we're constantly interested in, constantly learning how best we can master something new. So now you take the period of layoff, and a lot of times people are actually afforded a severance package. And so they actually have a period of time. So I definitely would encourage some of that time to be invested in emotional healing, and doing whatever that means. But another portion of that investment can go into, let me learn a skill that is very, very valuable. So I once heard one of the tech leaders mention that for his company to hire an artificial intelligence engineer, an AI engineer, they have to think about a starting bonus of $1 million. So, man, would it be a good idea to retool with learning how to effectively navigate this brand new space of AI when it's not brand new anymore? uh, Probably be a good idea, because you might get equipped with some skills that you can translate into getting a pretty commanding offer. There's a lot of practicality in developing these tools. Like, well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think people are afraid to retool, to gain new skills?
I don't think they're afraid. Probably they identify themselves with what they've done throughout the last 10 years. And so they think they are what they did. And so it's when you don't see in your mind the promise of your future, of a new future, it's difficult for you to pay the price. If you see the future, if you see the promise, if you see the dream, sometimes you are forced with layoff. You are not prepared. Some people may be, but some were not prepared. And so when they face that reality, it's so weird. It's like they lost their identity. And so for them, their life, their career is over because they are not dreaming with new possibilities. They're not seeing in their mind a new brand opportunity. It's good for someone outside to say, you can do this, you can learn Portuguese, you can learn AI, you can do other things. But I think the person needs to see in their mind first that it's possible. And yes, we should take action immediately, because when we get stuck, when we feel sorry for ourselves, it's harder and it's difficult to do the first step. So, even you identified another point that is so important is to prioritize mental and emotional resilience. And this is so important because how can someone process that initial shock if you don't have that resilience, that mental strength? What are your thoughts?
I think you just said some, very profound ideas, because you really are, you're really getting at why the shift needs to take place. And you're arguing the shift needs to take place quickly also. Don't panic. Okay. It's critical for you not to panic, no question about that. I just feel like you have to allow for some, it's okay to feel like today was a bad day. And I don't have to jump right this instant necessarily and just start doing X, Y, or Z. And if I do, then I still need to budget some time where I allow myself to feel like, man, that sucked. What they did to me was awful. Like, you got to take some time to do some of that. So the problem is sometimes people take too much time, and you don't want that during that time you're missing opportunities and everybody else is finding their, like, I understand the importance of cautioning that. And that's why, if you have saved up some finances and you're able to not be in a desperate situation, that's why that's really awesome. And if you haven't gotten laid off, this is a great reason why you do want to save up money so that you can allow yourself the time to heal and recover. But Sandra's also talking about the idea of momentum and how you don't want to jump into a ditch and then marvel at why you can't get out of it. Well, you don't have to really jump into a ditch. You don't have to crawl into a space that you're going to really have a hard time crawling out of. There is something to be said about, okay, let me dust off the resume, let me get my process going. I don't know, clean up my LinkedIn profile, whatever is the modern thing that you're supposed to do today, but make yourself as attractive as possible to other opportunities and get ready to keep moving forward. But I'm just saying, it can be a little impractical to tell a person, don't make any time or allowance for emotional healing. Just keep moving like you're a robot. We just don't work that way. And the risk is the psychological decompensation hijacks you because you didn't allow for it. All in a sudden, now just when you think you're prodding along, it kind of snatches you and sneaks up on you. And you don't want that. As opposed to, you can schedule it, you can build it into the plan. You can say, I am going to take some time to heal. And whether to what extent I involve professional or non-professional support, but I took a hit and I want to own that. And can we also just acknowledge that if 100 people experience layoff, there will be 100 different ways they experience it, different phases. And so different parts of what we're saying may apply to your situation, or it might not.
Absolutely. So, would you like to expand a little bit more on the importance of prioritizing mental and emotional resilience?
So this would be tip number 5,
Yeah.
in terms of prioritizing mental and emotional resilience. So just to summarize, tip number 1 was reframe the experience. Tip number 2 was activate your power network. Tip number 3 was turn your expertise into consulting or coaching. Tip number 4 was invest in your next level skills. And now we're at tip number 5, prioritize mental and emotional resilience. Does connect back to number 1 where we talked about reframing, because one of the ways you can help your emotional resilience is, hey, what if rejection is actually just redirection? Okay, what if it's just redirection? That's really critical. The other piece is, we've emphasized sometimes you need some help outside of yourself, and sometimes it needs to be professional help. So again, I don't like the rush, but time is of the essence. You don't necessarily have a lot of time to waste, and so you would like support that can help in some kind of a timely fashion. And at the Mastermind Institute, we really love neurobiology and science, but we feel like the spiritual, biblical principles have a meaningful contribution. So, in the course of healing emotionally, there's healing spiritually as well. You can imagine sometimes people feel let down. There are people who feel like, God is really supposed to make things good. And if things are bad, it's a sign that he's not present or something is wrong. And so sometimes there's some work that you might need to do along that line. You might need to have a conversation, perhaps with the person that you trust from a spiritual standpoint. But what I've seen is God can be very present, even though things are not going right. And those things not going right can be an important part of growth. So when we go to the gym, for many of us, it doesn't feel very good when you leave the gym, especially if you've had a good workout. Those muscles are ripped up. Those muscles are traumatized. In fact, Arnold Schwarzenegger literally uses the word shock the muscle. I don't know anything about bodybuilding from a meaningful standpoint in that sense. So I'm not talking about necessarily shocking the muscles, but I'm just saying in the process of growth, there's shock and trauma in the process of growth. If God is committed to our good, he's committed to our growth. And where there's growth, there's going to be shock and there's going to be some trauma. So we just want to remind you to make sure that you are getting some support from a spiritual mentor to help you reconcile some of what might feel is not reconciled in terms of feeling good, experiencing bad, even in the context of a loving God.
Great. How can someone see layoff as a divine redirection?
I think the examples abound in scripture where things kind of don't go as planned. And even more so, God often called his prophets to take steps with very specific, limited direction. So they didn't even know what the plan was. And you think of whether it's Moses or whether you think of a ton of the prophets, you think about Moses leading the children of Israel and him being asked questions, and he literally doesn't have the answer to the question. I don't know, I'm waiting. Um, you may recall when they're waiting at the Red Sea and they see Pharaoh's army coming, and this looks like they're about to be annihilated. When in fact, no, it's actually the Egyptians that are going to be destroyed. I just love the verse in scripture. I believe it's Exodus 12, where the Israelites are terrified and they're saying some awful things to Moses. They're saying, didn't we tell you to leave us alone? Didn't we tell you it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians? What did you just call us out here to this desert just to die? Were there not graves in Egypt? If you listen to their language, it's almost like they're calling Moses a fool, right? And what is his response? It's such a beautiful response. He goes, "Fear not." It's like he appropriately diagnoses the issue. Fear not. Stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. And then he says this, I paraphrase: for the Egyptians you see today, you shall see them no more forever. For the Egyptians you see today, you will see them no more forever. So, some of the opportunities, some of the Egyptians that we are seeing coming at us, it could very well be it is a setup to remove them from harassing us forever.
Yeah, and sometimes the Egyptians are in our head. That nagging voice that is playing in our head saying, "Oh, I don't see if it's possible. Oh, I'm not ready for it." No, you just need to take action. You just need to believe God is with you, God is in you, God is empowering you, and is acting on your behalf to succeed. And you need to believe that better days are coming, right?
Should their actions wait for the belief?
The belief comes first.
I'm saying
And
I
then,
think sometimes the actions can come first, I guess is what I'm saying. Because I mean, I think sometimes we need to act before there's a complete belief that everything's going to be okay. No, act anyway. And as you act, that sometimes can reinforce the belief. Like and then sometimes good things start happening and it reinforces it. So I just wanted to kind of arrange.
yeah, I agree with you. But if we understand that we have the power to create, and the power, the strength comes from within, then if we own our mind, if we own our thoughts, we can close our eyes, and instead of worrying, we start creating, we start imagining, we
Yeah,
start thinking of a better, brighter future.
I think you're highlighting we have a responsibility to develop belief. We have a responsibility to author belief. I can't tell you how many times as I'm working with Sandra and I make a statement and she's like, I want you to think positively. I need you to think positively. I need you to believe. And because we're all vulnerable. We're all vulnerable and we need that person next to us that is able to be that I need you to appeal to your best self. You're better than that. And so I understand what you're saying when you talk about it starts with belief. You're saying, well, you can control that. And where your beliefs are, your actions are going to follow. And so of course I'm challenging that a little bit because I'm like, please do not wait for belief. Please don't wait till, okay, now I believe, now I can do it. No, you got to get out there sometimes having no belief but having faith. You don't know that it's going to happen, but it's, you know what, I'm going to have faith. Substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. I don't have any evidence to support my belief. I have now faith. Now I'm going to will it. Now I'm going to have faith. And so I'm going to move out there in faith. And then the belief will come subsequently. Go ahead, Sandra.
In my perspective, faith is believe in the unseen. So, first for me comes belief,
You guys,
because,
go ahead,
yeah,
go ahead, go ahead, go
in
ahead.
my experience as a coach, in my experience, I always envision things that I want, and I take action on it,
I love
because
it.
I don't want to take action without a purpose. I don't want to take action just to take action. So I need to think strategically. I need to have my beliefs set on the things that matter the most. And so I take action, purposeful action. This is my thought. Well, today's the
Oh,
sixth tip.
you don't get off that easily. So please comment who you think is right. Is it faith, then belief, or is it belief, then faith? Please comment on who's right. And I don't mind if Sandra is right on this one, but what we'd really like to see is we want to see you weigh in. Is it belief, then faith, or is it faith, then belief? And where's all that with action? Because I'm with you, Sandra. Like, we're not effective with action minus strategy and intention and purpose. Agreed. However, especially in crisis, sometimes there isn't complete clarity, and yet some action needs to take place. So Please help us resolve this argument. All right,
Because
over to you.
one thing is the beginning and another thing is at the end. So when clarity is more about the result or the end, but you can start with the end in mind if you imagine the result that you want.
Nice,
Okay,
nice.
so
Go ahead.
we can move to the
Number 6.
number 6, build multiple streams of income. How important is that? Not only for people who are facing layoff, but in general, as a preparation. What are your thoughts?
Okay, my thoughts are this is very problematic because obviously it sounds wonderful, build multiple streams of income. Again, this goes back to the monetize your content without any warning about the hell involved in actually effectively monetizing your content. All right, some of
Stay
you maybe do
positive,
it.
stay positive.
All right, let's be positive, right? But I just and because what I'm partly doing is I want to be real, and there are those of you that have done some of this, and you're like, dude, it's not as easy as they like to make it out to be. So I just want to own that. But by the same token, when you strategically diversify, okay, not just diversifying for the sake of diversifying, but when you strategically diversify, then you get velocity. Financial velocity, especially growth. When you're talking about like money really compounding and moving really well, it's when you strategically diversify. And I get a lot of concern about diversification at the beginning because you really need focus to break through. You really need focus. And anyone who's achieved any measure of success knows that whenever you're talking to somebody and they're talking about doing 100 things, you know their results are often inconsequential. You know this. When, on the other hand, the people who are incredibly consequential, one thing. And from that one thing, they've given birth to 100 things, but it's one thing. Serena, Tiger, Michael, Warren. And it's funny because they are so dominant, they only go by one name. I say one name and you know who they are. Okay? And that one name, you know them for one thing. One thing. And from that one thing, now they get the diversification. So, especially if you're regrouping and we're dealing with something like a layoff where you are going back to fundamentals, and it's, and you're never going back to zero, guys, because thanks to your experience level, it's never zero. Okay. And it feels like a step back, but you're really just kind of shifting, you're pivoting. Focus is so critical. Focus. And what focus is going to mean for your specific situation. How do you avoid shiny object syndrome? How do you can see why you really need counseling so that you can make the best guess. But there is a stage where now you want to diversify your streams of income. There is a stage where you want to arrange things in such a way where it's contributing to the velocity of growth. Okay. And if you want the book, that talks about this in the most powerful way, you will probably get back to me and say, people make a lot of promises, but that book is really good. That book is really good as it helps with finances. This is really a powerful book. I promise you that. But it's where I first encountered that term, financial velocity, growth velocity. It's really powerful.
It's just for the first 10, right?
I'm going to connect them. So whoever, you want to say the first 10? Sure. Because I can't sit here doing it for a million people. so
That's
you're
why
right.
I'm
So the
saying.
first 10, absolutely. Thank you. That's Sandra saving me. Yeah. So definitely the first 10. And then obviously if it gets overwhelming, then we'll post the link. We'll post the link somewhere. All right. But anyway, so as far as multiple streams of income, that is often a strategy for later after you've really kind of established yourself. So it's critical but sequence matters. When you're focused on multiple, streams of income, that's you want to do that at the right time.
And it's so easy to do it. Anyone can do it. And sometimes we wait until the end of the month to have enough money to save. You can buy gold with $10. You can start doing it. Start looking at your finances as your backup plan. So now we're heading to the seventh point. Set a bold vision for the next 5 to 10 years. So, what is a bold vision? Because when I look at someone, when I talk with someone, I experience that that person's future will be of the size of their dreams. So, how bold, how big should be your vision? Can you expand on that?
Have I got a tip for you? So hopefully you own, whether it's ChatGPT or one of these. Have I got a tip for you? Again, this is a reward for those of you that made it to the end. All right. So as far as this vision, and I love to be authentic. So I actually got this from somebody else. It was a news anchor that showed up on my Instagram, and she made this recommendation. And of course, I modified it to work for me. And what she said was, you go into the chat GPT. So first of all, she said you write down and ideally digitize what it is you dream of. Write down a list of what you want, just a list of what you want. I don't know. I want to do this. I want to be a millionaire. I want to do this. I want to achieve this. I want to do just dream and dream big. Okay. But you write it down, and I would recommend you digitize it because of what will be the next step. So the next step is you take what you've written down, you put it into chat, and you say, write a story of how this dream is fulfilled. Now, for me, I did something interesting because I gave it a time frame of 1 year. Okay. You can go ahead and make it what the time of your choosing, and then see the story that chat writes. And then you can keep playing with it and modify it and make it as real and pertinent to your situation as you want. But that thing is gangster. It is gangster. I really encourage you, come back and comment if you did it and what kind of awesome suggestions you got. Because I think that's when some people really get to awaken to the amazing possibilities of chat. So yes, not only should you craft a bold vision, but there's a lot of support. There's a lot of AI support that can help you craft a bold vision, a vision that you enjoy working on. The other thing I'll say about that, before I make that point, Sandra, what are your thoughts?
I think we should first do our math.
Do
First,
your math?
do our math. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And when I say that, is think about when you were a child. Think about the things you enjoyed. Think about the dreams you had for your future. Probably now is the right time to start acting on those dreams. And that's why I talk about your brand soul essence. And grab it, and yes, you can start writing it down. Start writing it down, and don't worry, you are not going to add it. It's just to clarify your mind. It's just to, because sometimes when we work for others, when we are employees, we never ask ourselves what we are good at, what we would love to do, what kind of business we would dream of having. Now is the right time for you to dream, and you don't need to pay to dream. So write down your goals and do not limit yourself. Dream big, and then start writing down small incremental steps of what you can start doing today to achieve what you want. And start making a plan, a vision board. It's so important to have a vision board, and start planning your future 1 year ahead, 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and start taking action now. And yes, as Doug said, ChatGPT can help you with that. But when you start writing down your goals, a certain kind of magic starts to happen because you start feeling powerful, feeling owning your life. Owning, because when you work for others, you take your paycheck as guaranteed. When you are on your own, you need to make it happen. You need to achieve and be mindful. And some people talk about time management. You need to manage yourself first to understand how your time is precious. And then when you manage yourself through the time that you have, at the end of the day, if you have a planner and you check the things you should have done, and you feel proud of yourself. So it's about attitude, gratitude, and being strategic about a new, brighter future because you are not who you were. You are not what you did. You are much more than that. And you can do it. Go out and do it. Fight for your life.
We just gotta let that sit for a little bit. Just kind of let that drip down into your soul a little bit. Just let that wash over you. I love that. I love that. I feel like I just took a nice refreshing shower, complete with shifting it, making cold at the end. I mean, do you do that?
A daily.
Yeah, and it's like you walk out of that shower so empowered. So I really love that. I would say the other part that was recommended using chat was now write the daily routine to make that dream come true. Like that was also really awesome. And then last but not least, when we talk about a bold vision for the next 5 to 10 years, don't be afraid to estimate, hey, you know what? How long am I going to live, right? Let's say I got another 50 years. Imagine taking each year to master something. Like if you really knew, hey, I'm going to live for that amount of time. And I mean, this is something we should think about even as we're raising our children. Imagine raising them with this kind of mindset. Each year, make it a discipline to master something. This is the year I'm going to master Facebook advertising. This is the year I'm going to master Instagram. This is the year I'm going to master the ukulele. This is the year I'm going to dedicate to mastering public speaking. This is the year that I'm going to dedicate to negotiating. What kind of person would you become when year after year is characterized by special devotion to skill acquisition in a certain area? This is what we mean by long-term thinking. But yeah, make that vision bold because you want that when the alarm clock goes off, you're actually excited about getting out of bed and working on it. I know personally, when I'm going to bed, it's bittersweet. Like I'm happy that I'm tired and I'm going to get a good night's sleep, but it is a little bitter that I don't get to just keep working and working and working. Because I mean, I love what I'm working on. What are your thoughts, Sandra?
I love that. And it's important what you said about dreams because most people do not dream. Because when they were child, someone told them, hey, you're growing up, stop dreaming, face reality. So the right thing is that reality is what you dream in your mind, is your vision, is your belief, is your creativity. So empower yourself with the power you already have and start acting on your dream. Your dream is possible.
Sandra, do you love dreaming and executing?
Yes, absolutely.
When
Absolutely.
When and what made you fall in love with dreaming and executing?
When I learned that, because as I said, as a child, I thought it was just childish to dream, to envision, to think about something unrealistic, something that we thought it was not possible. And so when I start reading the right books, when I start applying, when I start doing without knowing the result, when I open my mind to the experience of dreaming, envisioning, and acting on that, oh my God, things start to happen that you just want to do more and more and more. But no one taught us how to think. And when that's why you need a coach, because most of us, we know a lot of things. We are living on an era of plenty information, but you do not implement all that you know. And that's why you need a coach. That's why Dr. Whyte's program is so amazing, because it makes you achieve faster the results that you want. Because it's not about knowing, it's about consistency, commitment, and focus. Did I answer your question?
I fell in love with dreaming and executing in college. I was talking to a one of my professors, and her accolades were so surpassing. I mean, they were just so amazing. And I thought to myself, everyone should know this. I said, imagine if there was, because we had chapel. So I was like, imagine if there was a chapel in which there was an award ceremony for faculty. So as students, we would actually know what these people had accomplished. And then we realized all faculty have some pluses, but they also have some negatives. So while you're applauding them, that people be like, now why would you applaud that person, you know? And so then we realized, well, what if we chiseled it down to what they were amazing at? So that there would be like no controversy. Like everybody, no, in this area, they dominate in this area. And so we did exactly that. We did exactly that. And the result was a faculty award ceremony for chapel where we learned, and I got to see, because I was a scholastic VP at the time, but I got to see having an idea, having it implemented, seeing it impact people's lives. This was good for the faculty and it was good for the students. And it started with just an idea. And that for me was just something I was like, it is just a thrill to conceive of something and then execute it. So that's when I fell in love with dreaming. But it's completely risk-free. We are very passionate about helping you fulfill your dreams, getting you through some of these rough moments. So there is a preliminary free consultation if you wanted to kind of just learn more about some of our offers, or you might just say, nah, I already get the vibe that I would like working with you. So I'd like to sign up for an hour of consultation. We have that available. So reach out to us at info@the Institute and let us know what it is you need so that we can then let you know how you can access us. Again, info@the Institute. Over to you, Sandra.
Okay, now that we are coming to an end, Doc, would you like to give us a brief summary of the 7 tips to handling layoff?
Yeah, so those 7 tips are as follows. Number 1, reframe the experience. So we talked about the power of shifting your mindset. Don't get stuck. Be sure that you get the support you need to shift. Number 2, activate your power network. We know that you might not initially feel like going out there shaking hands, but get out there, shake those hands, and get this. See if you can be of value. Okay. See how you might be a source of support, even a source of encouragement. Number 3, turn your expertise into consulting or coaching. So, again, this is why you see that shift is so important because you have assets that the marketplace may need. And if it's not quite at that place, sometimes you just have to retool a little in order to make sure that it's super marketable. Number four, invest in your next level skills. We have a marketplace that is making so many changes. It's pushing out some of the old jobs, but it's bringing in some new jobs. So make sure you are developing those skills. Number five, prioritize mental and emotional resilience. There is a space to make sure that you're healing. Okay. There is absolutely a space where you need to divert energy, resources, and time into making sure that you heal. This can be a real hit to you when we get laid off, and so be sure you take some time to invest the resources, getting that therapist, the coach, mastermind support, and at the Mastermind Institute, we acknowledge the role of spirituality. So sometimes you actually need that spirituality and deal with some of those challenges that come up where you're trying to reconcile a loving God despite experiencing some really bad experiences. Number six, build multiple streams of income. So make sure that you execute that when it's appropriate, especially if you're pivoting. That does require special focus, but eventually you do want to strategically arrange multiple streams of income such that you can have financial velocity. Again, if you've made it this far, if you email me info at the Mastermind Institute, I will email the first 10 this book that I think is a absolute game changer. Okay. It's not my book, Killing Burnout, Mastering the Art of Resilience. It is a different book. It is an absolute game changer. You email me and I want to reward you with that book. Number seven, tip number seven was set a bold vision for the next 5 to 10 years. Bold vision, a vision that gets you getting out of bed. You're excited to work on it. And remember all seven of those tips. Okay. This is so layoff can be a setback that sets you up to some groundbreaking success, especially if you do the right work on your mindset.
See you next week. Follow our channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also remind yourself that it's your responsibility to take care of your body, your mind, and your soul.
Master your
Master your
mind
mind
so
so you
you
can
can
master
master your life.
your life.
Love it. Till next time.
Till next time.